The following is rated S for spoilers.
What are like some of the craziest villains that you guys have fought?
Seems you've met some of them.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I fought an alien made out of black goo once.
Oh, no way. I fought an alien too. On Earth and in space.
Oh.
Yeah, he was purple.
I want to fight an alien.
Hello and welcome to the Popcorn Hangover. My name is Alex.
My name is Graham.
And today we are discussing Spider-Man No Way Home. I guess the more fun stuff version.
Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of just talking about it in general, but
Yeah.
we're talking about it this week because of the more fun stuff version.
Oh, yeah.
Graham, how's it going?
It's going good, man. It's going good. It's been a good week.
Yeah?
Yeah. Happy to be back.
Yeah. I mean, talking Spider-Man, I know that...
One of our favorites.
I mean, yeah, I'm obsessed with Spider-Man. I have now seen No Way Home 6 times in theaters.
Dang.
In total. So, you know, I hated this movie. It was too awful.
Yeah. I guess it's only my third time going. I think this is because I think I only saw it like twice when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it this time in theater. But I mean, I've seen it several times. The minute it dropped and I could buy it, I bought it. Like, I think I literally own it on 2 different platforms, but it's fine. 3, I mean, I guess it's not on Disney Plus.
No, it is not
will
Disney
be.
Plus. It probably won't be.
Probably won't be, actually,
because Sony sucks.
Sony does suck.
Yeah. Spider-Man No Way Home was directed by John Watts, written by Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, starring all sorts of people: Tom Holland, Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, Benedict Cumberbatch, Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, Jamie Foxx, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield,
The boys.
Marissa Tomei. So many people.
So many people.
Such
a good cast.
Initially, it was released in December 17th of 2021 here in the U.S. with an estimated budget about $200 million. So far, it has a worldwide gross of $1.9 billion.
That's a B.
With a B, yes.
That's a lot of money.
$805 million domestically. It's grossed. It's likely going to pass this weekend both Infinity War and The Force Awakens and the domestic top 10, and it'll take the number 4 spot.
Wow.
More than likely. And the reason that's so significant is because that's all without China, because China didn't show this movie.
Oh, that's right.
And China is like, right now, is
big
very, very close to, during COVID especially, it was beating U.S. box office numbers. So that is a very impressive feat to do without China.
Dude, imagine if they had those numbers, though.
Yes.
This would be number 1.
It would, yeah.
Probably.
I mean,
Hands
yeah,
down.
it would be even bigger somehow. We talked last week with like, why are these re-releases happening?
Right.
Before Rogue One was announced, like that was what this episode was going to be about. And I don't know, this one, it's very obvious that they released it so they can try to get another
solid push.
Yeah, they're just going to try to go up for that $2 billion probably, and it is extremely likely that they're going to hit it. Yeah. No problems there, I don't think. Especially Labor Day weekend, Cinema Day, which was really cool. I'm excited to see those numbers come out later this week. See how.
I actually saw like a TikTok or something that was like, it was just like promoting like movies, and the dude was just like, he's like, what are you gonna do on Labor Day? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, go to a barbecue? Like, no, you're not. Go to the movies. Go see another movie. And I was like, literally, that's us.
Yeah. We were just gonna see Spider-Man several more times. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. So yeah, Graham, what are your thoughts on Spider-Man?
I love this movie overall.
Mm-hmm.
The extra stuff was really nice to see. I honestly, especially the way they like put it in, because like we've mentioned this before, like in most movies, whenever they add extra things, it's like an extra post-credit scene. It's something else at the end. It's nothing like in the movie, and they just fit these in as if it was
right. Like this was, I thought that it was brilliant the way they marketed it, because I was going in expecting it to be like the Endgame re-release where it was like a Stan Lee featurette and then some crap, like literally the worst deleted scene from Endgame. Like when it came on Disney Plus and you're seeing all these really cool stuff, it's like, why couldn't any of those have been in there?
Right.
But it's fine. Yeah. That's what I was expecting here. I was expecting it to be like a featurette with the 3 of them just talking, and then
like something that's almost not worth it.
Like I was just expecting it to be the cut moments from like the scaffolding scene, and that was it. But yeah,
like bloopers or something. Like
they made this more of a like it's basically a director's cut. It's a whole new cut, but they didn't call it a director's cut because it's not It's not different. This is objectively worse than the original. It's still like it's still a really fun watch, but pacing is all over the place because you have these extra scenes that don't really.
They just make things a little longer than you ever needed them.
Yes, but it was still a very enjoyable experience. I kind of wish. I mean, it made almost $2 billion. So there's not many people who haven't seen this movie.
Right.
But I kind of like want to ask someone who hasn't seen it, like what they think of it. Cause there's really only 2 noticeably different scenes, that are just like, oh, this is very different.
It's very extended. Like there's way more here.
Yeah. Like the whole, Betty Brant interview, high school stuff.
I like those
fantastic.
a lot. That was so
I love it.
funny.
I love how they just keep going back on it and keep building on it. Like there's that, and then the extra like Daredevil scene are the only 2 like super obvious.
Right.
These were not in the original, but even like there are some things like where I almost feel like they added just like 1 or 2 extra punches during some fights and like things like that. Like I don't know. I need to just go like back like side by side and just watch them both and see like where all of the differences.
2.5 hours at that point.
I mean, I've already seen it 6 times.
I was gonna say it's not. What's one more?
What's a couple more hours more? Yeah, I love No Way Home. I think. I mean, we're gonna dive into this deeper next segment. Like what makes a Spider-Man movie? I think this might be my favorite Spider-Man movie, and I think it's pretty dang close to being a perfect Spider-Man movie. But we'll get into that a little more later. I don't know. Everything about this is just incredible. And if I were to listen to this episode like a year ago, because this would have been like a couple months before the movie came out,
right?
I would hate myself because I was the biggest opponent to Spider-Verse related anything. Yeah. Like I remember like Jamie Foxx was the first one to get leaked, and I was like, no, he's just gonna play another version of Electro. It's fine. And then they kept talking about all these villains, and I was like, this is a terrible idea. And then there was all the rumors about Andrew and Tobey, and I was like, they're going to ruin Spider-Man. I hate everybody. And honestly, all the way up until those characters started showing up on screen, I was against it. But man, like the first several times I watched it, like I would tear up, not when like Aunt May dies, but like when all 3 Spideys are like jumping off and like swinging on each other.
With each other.
It was just everything that I've always wanted from a Spider-Man movie, like my childhood, like being brought to life on screen.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, obviously we've seen so many like cartoon versions and like seeing Into the Spider-Verse and like all these like mixes of like several Spider-Man and all this stuff like on the screen. But when you do see something like in real, obviously it's not like real life, but if it is a live action version, it hits you harder than like anything else you've ever wanted to see. Like, cause that is true. Like we've seen so many other things, but dude, like those moments, I'm just like, I could die now and I'd be fine. Like I could die happy. Like it's just, it
now that
gives me everything I've like wanted, but that's what I'm excited for is cause what are we going to get?
I want to say that because I remember seeing Endgame and saying I could die now and die happy, but I mean, now I've seen it Spider-Man. It's like, well, wait, good thing I didn't die because I saw
that would have been
like,
bad.
What's coming up next?
Right. Fantastic Four.
Yeah, we'll see. No, I mean, yeah, like, and that's the thing that Into the Spider-Verse did that was really clever, was they didn't have multiple Peter Parkers. They have all these different Spider-Mans, but none of them are Peter Parker. And it seems like that's where they're going for the second one. And that's fine. I mean, Spider-Man, we're just jumping right into the next segment. Like this little tease. Like, I don't know, Spider-Man means a lot. There's a lot that goes in the name of Spider-Man. So like, this is the first time like, I feel like we've really seen on the screen the different versions of Peter. Like, Peter Parker has his own issues and struggles, and sure, those things kind of go off and with other Spider-Men, but like everybody's a little different. Like Peter Parker and Miles Morales, both their Spider-Mans deal with the same general ideas, but they are both tackling different things, because they're different people with different backgrounds. And so seeing these 3 versions of Peter was a totally different experience than the other Spider-Man crossovers we've seen in the past. And I think it was just brilliant. Like, one of the things that they were really pushing when they were marketing the film was like, this is like a celebration of cinema, which I totally agree with. Like, that's what I was really concerned about. I thought this was going to be, we're going to go through the movie, final act, Tobey and Andrew were going to show up and be like, yeah, we're going to fight. And then they all like fight and then they say bye and they leave. And there was going to be no point to it whatsoever.
Right.
It
They
wasn't,
were just there to be there.
It was just going to be there to sell tickets for the spectacle, whatever. But I think they did. I mean, Chris McKenna, Eric Summers, and I mean, now John Watts can also get credit for this. Everyone involved should get credit for this because it was honestly the best thing that they could have possibly done, and a thing that I thought they for sure weren't going to do was actually make them a part of the story. Like everyone has something to do in this movie, which I'll touch on in a second. But like specifically with Toby and Andrew, like Toby got his trilogy, and really his story is kind of finished. I mean, there's still more stories to tell, and they could have taken in other directions. But overall, like he has a very full arc with Harry and MJ and all that stuff. So like his story's kind of done. Andrew obviously didn't get the end to his story. Kind of okay with that in terms of just the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And then Tom, especially with this one, we're realizing this is just the beginning of his story. And so it was really brilliant how they used the 3 Spider-Men.
Yeah.
Toby doesn't say a whole lot in this movie.
No.
I mean, a little more than in the more stuff version, but like in the original, he doesn't say a whole lot. He's just kind of there to be like,
besides them like up on the rooftop and him kind of directing the whole.
I mean, yeah, he's just there to be like, okay, hey, Andrew, like you're amazing. Hey, Tom,
just a hype man.
Like Tom, like don't kill the Green Goblin. Like he was there, like he was mentoring because his story's done, and so he was just helping them finish go through their stories. I don't know, yeah. So like the way that they handled the 3 Spider-Man and the way that they made sure that this was still Tom Holland's Spider-Man movie. Yeah. Because that's how it is in like the comic books, like especially like with Miles Morales involved, like when he joined 616. Right. Sure, like Peter and Miles will like team up and they'll help each other out at times, but they are always on their own separate journeys, and they'll just kind of cross over for a minute and help each other out and then carry on. Yeah. But to the villains, I mean, that's another aspect of it that I was really worried about. How are they going to handle all of these characters and give them all time? And other than the Lizard, it was all handled perfectly. Yeah. Everyone had something to do. They all had their own motivations. Like it wasn't like the reason that I'm okay with it not being Sinister Six is because the whole idea is all 6 of us are going to beat up Spider-Man because we don't like Spider-Man. Right. But that's not what this was. Everyone, I mean, Goblin was just being Goblin. Yeah. Doc Ock wanted his machine back. Yeah. Electro wanted to stay in the world. Sandman wanted to leave. Like everyone had their own motivations.
Yep. Aside from Spider-Man.
Yeah, they didn't really care about Spider-Man. They just wanted to either get home or not go home. Right. And that created a lot of interesting dynamics within the group, and also made like whenever the 3 Spider-Man are on the scaffolding and they're just like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, it's not like the villains decided to hold off and not attack anymore. Like Sandman's trying to stop Electro from destroying the box. Like there's all these motivations. Yes, it's not explicitly mentioned, but like the undertones of it all are
they took their time.
Extremely clever. Other than the Lizard, he was just kind of there to be there. Yeah. But at least instead of trying to force him to do something, they just said, "Oh yeah, he just wanted to wait in the truck." Right.
You're also not going to get a lizard through a building, realistically.
I mean, they got a man literally made out of sand to go through the building.
I mean, yeah,
and a guy with robot arms wrapped around himself.
Okay.
I feel like a lizard is just like a.
I mean, those in 2022, that's a cosplay, my guy. That's people walking around the streets in today's time. You wouldn't freak anyone out.
What about the lizard could be the same thing. Maybe it's just a really realistic costume.
I feel like you'd get more freak out over that than the other guy. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I don't know what the security is like in Happy's building. I mean,
clearly poor. It's a terrible.
Except for his actual building has 4 freaking locks on it. Yeah. For like an apartment.
His door. Well, and to be fair, I mean, like he would do that himself. That's how I would I would all trick it out and have fun cameras and
that's fair.
All that jazz.
Fair. Speaking of the apartment building, I never really noticed it in the first go around, but like this time after having lots of time away from the movie, like I feel like that the whole apartment sequence, starting with when the Goblin takes over Norman's body, that whole sequence might be my favorite sequence in any Spider-Man movie.
That was the best visual form, I think, of like a spider sense, like in just the way it like followed him through the apartment, like they shot him. It was incredible. That was like the best scene. Yeah, for that.
Well, yeah, it was such a cool moment, like seeing him realize it. But even just the fighting, and I mean, I can go on and on, but like, so you have like Peter and Goblin. They're going at it. Everyone's kind of running around and escaping.
Yeah.
Lizard is attacking Peter, and like he's going through these fights and like just seeing Spider-Man be like just pulling off things that before I only thought you could see in a comic book.
Yep.
Like Tobey's Spider-Man is amazing, but there were lots of limitations to what they could do.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 took it a little too far with the CG and what they could do. I feel like with Tom Holland's Spider-Man as a whole, they found a really happy medium between what they can do practically and what to do with CG.
Definitely.
And they've created like a Spider-Man that feels real, but is also pulling off these stunts that only a comic book could do.
Or a video game.
Or a video game, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, and it's little things like when he uses his webs to like break the glass window.
Yep.
That's the most satisfying and also the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it just the way they use the fighting to visually tell the story. When he's attacking Goblin, he's punching him, but he's very clearly not punching him with the same intensity as he is in the final confrontation when he's not pulling his punches. And like, it's a very subtle thing. And if you're not looking, if you haven't seen it 6 times, you may not notice that like there's a very
broken through that man's skull in one hit. Like when he was like on his shoulders, you were talking about like in the hallway. Yeah. And just punch after punch.
Like he's definitely punching him, but it's not with the same
could have torn him apart.
Visual intensity. And like, it's so cool to see that growth throughout. And even just like satisfying things, like when Goblin's just like smashing him through all the wall, like floor, like
just
sure,
floor
physics,
after floor
the physics don't make any sense with that, but it was really cool to watch.
Yeah.
And then of course, just the whole moment with him and Aunt May and how Marissa Tomei acted that just whole thing where she's dying, but she doesn't realize she's dying. And like, we're seeing that Uncle Ben moment, but with her, it was all so, it was so well crafted.
I have a question.
I have an answer.
I think I actually have asked this before. I genuinely was like trying to think to myself if like I had the answer already. Where's Ben? Is his Uncle Ben dead in this universe?
I mean, yeah, because he has like,
I know he has a suitcase and like his little things.
I think Aunt May's mentioned it a few times, but like, we don't actually know what happened.
Okay.
I would assume.
Because I know they really haven't, they've never given that explanation because he never had that. That's my vengeance. That's my story.
I would assume that he does have the same, if not a very similar story. It just didn't have the same impact because
he was too young or something.
Not he was too young, but like a lot of the reason that it impacts other Spider-Men is because it's his fault that Uncle Ben died. So in this universe, it could just be a matter of Uncle Ben was in a mugging and he died. Peter had nothing to do with it, but decided, hey, since Uncle Ben died, I'm going to help other people.
Yeah.
And he more selfishly became Spider-Man. And I think that's interesting, like with even the original Spider-Man, there aren't as many superheroes around. Like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men were kind of the big things in the 60s when Spider-Man was introduced. With the 2 live-action Spider-Man, like there are no other superheroes.
Right.
So everything was a lot more self-motivated, but it could be interesting to like, I mean, they would never actually be able to explain this, but I think it's an interesting, my headcanon is like, you know, they established that the little kid in Iron Man 2 is Peter Parker. Like, Peter could have become Spider-Man very selfishly, and that's what makes his story fit with the others. While it is longer and he became Spider-Man sooner, he didn't become who Spider-Man needs to be until this third one because it was all a very selfish, I want to be a superhero like the other Avengers. Yeah. I don't know. That makes sense. That's my off the top of my head. What? That is my off the top of my head headcanon.
There you go. No, yeah.
Saying head twice in a row is what threw me off there. I was like, wait.
And that makes sense. I like, yeah.
I don't know. That's what I'm going to go with from now on. So you heard it here first. That's totally what was going on there.
Yeah. I have another question too. This is a little off topic because I know we haven't touched on much of the like She-Hulk, and obviously we'll probably get, that'll be an episode here in a few weeks after the ending. Does Wong still remember Spider-Man?
No.
No? Because he remembers erasing everyone's minds.
No. So here's the thing that just I've seen a lot of.
Yeah.
That people just don't understand what the ending was. They didn't get rid of Spider-Man. Nobody remembers Peter Parker.
Right. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like, does Wong remember Peter though?
No.
You think
everyone? I mean, Spider-Man has to exist because he's done lots of really big things.
Right.
So, yes, like Doctor Strange and Wong, they can still talk about, oh yeah, we helped Spider-Man. The multiverse broke. It was crazy. But if you said who's Spider-Man, they wouldn't have any idea. And the thing that the more fun stuff version did that I thought was really great was in the second post-credit scene that replaced the Multiverse of Madness scene. They didn't just get rid of Peter. Peter's still in those photos, but he's very clearly cropped out.
The bird over his face.
There's a bird over his face.
You'll see his arm on the side.
Yeah, you can see his shoulder, but they cropped him out because there's, I don't remember who this kid is. Like, let's just take him out of the photo because he doesn't go to the school anymore. Like, Peter's still there. His records are still probably there. Honestly, he probably could have gone back to school if he really wanted to. Just no one would remember who he was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, Spider-Man and everything is still around. Peter Parker still exists. Just if you go to a 2-year-old and you say, what's 2 plus 2? They don't know it's 4, but that doesn't change the fact that 2 plus 2 equals 4.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, they forgot that that he exists, but it doesn't change the fact that he
So does it, like,
that he does.
What about, like, the videos that Betty has, those interviews, those, like little things? Like, I get, like, the pictures and stuff, like, are blurred and, like, scratched. Like, is it similar things? Like, because, like, she has whole interviews. Like, she's got a video at home. She's like, when did I do this?
Well,
like,
I mean,
like,
like, there are videos in that post-credit scene, like, with Peter in it. They just cropped him out because, like, I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you do make a point. Like, there would be videos of them talking about how Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I mean, it's magic.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I know. I said, we don't.
That's the best answer I can give you for that. It's magic.
Yeah.
What I will say, though, about Spider-Man is, like, I think this is the most comic book movie I've ever seen, with the exception of Into the Spider-Verse, because it's literally a comic book.
Literally, you pause at any point in time, and yeah.
But this reminded me of, like, because the way comics work is you have issues, and several issues make up arcs,
right?
And then several arcs make up a volume. And so No Way Home kind of felt like a volume. Like there's this Spider-Verse volume. And then you have like the first act with him dealing with everyone knowing his identity.
Right.
That's like several issues of this arc of him, especially with the more fun stuff version, having more of the high school experience in there. That felt very much like one specific arc. And then hunting down the Sinister Five and trying to help them, that's another arc. And then they all escape. And then you get the other Spider-Mans, that's a third arc. Like it felt, I mean, it's like sub 3 hours, but like it felt a lot like a comic book just in the way it flowed and the pacing of it. Because one thing like I've noticed is when people talk about the movie, they don't really talk about like the first 30, 40 minutes of it.
Oh, not at all.
And I mean, I get it. It's nothing crazy going on, but that's not something that we've actually gotten to see before on the screen with Spider-Man, is like how he deals with everyone knowing his identity. I do really wish they took the One More Day storyline. Man, the last issue just makes me cry. Like when Peter and MJ are like have to decide like, are we gonna break up and never remember each other, but like still have that feeling of love for each other, but not know what's going on, or do we want to let Aunt May die, even though like she's really old? It was heartbreaking. Highly recommend everybody go read.
That was the story with Mephisto, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember when you told me that, I was like, yeah, that's what they're going to do, because everyone on the face of the earth was like, Mephisto, that Mephisto. I'm positive I saw Mephisto, that was Mephisto. It's going to be Mephisto. And at first I was like, okay, wait, like they could actually kind of do that with
2021 was the year of Mephisto.
My goodness. Everything.
That's
really,
what it's going to go down as. Yeah, I mean,
and they're never going to use, like, watching like him
never
like
No Way Home
screen.
was definitely the opportunity to use Mephisto. Right. It's good with where they went. Where they ended up going, it's good that they didn't.
Yeah.
But also, like, I was watching it, like, it would have been a really great opportunity. And I've said it before, I'm a broken record about it, but, like, I really just want, like, an on-the-ground Spider-Man just fighting, like, Kingpin and Hammerhead and, like, just taking out gangsters and stuff. That's a Spider-Man that I want to see more of.
Like, literally take the, like, PS4, like, the Marvel Spider-Man. Like, just make that a movie. Like even like his interactions with Miles, like his interaction, like just him, like in the streets, like with May and like her, like
I want it even
charities and things. Like
I want it like even more grounded than that.
Yeah.
Like I I mean, Spider-Man PS4 was fantastic.
Yeah.
That's another great Spider-Man story. But like, I want maybe even just like a version of like the DLCs of that where it's just he's fighting gangsters.
Yeah, okay.
Working with the police. Like, the world's not at stake.
Yeah.
Not even really the whole of New York is really at stake. It's just like the gangsters are like going to take over and he's got to stop the mob because, you know.
Yeah. Which I hope we do.
And I want it to be
like,
directed
with
by Martin
him-
Scorsese.
I'll never do that. I really hope we do see more of like the grounded Spider-Man, especially with the fact that like if he does say kind of move away, because if everyone's going to school and say he moves out of the city and he does his own thing, but he's still in the city, especially with, and I don't know how it's going to be connected at all, but the Madam Spider movie that has been in works.
Madam Web is a
Madam
Sony
Web.
thing though, so that wouldn't exist in this universe.
But see, that's what I'm upset about. I don't know, because I just didn't know if they'll introduce any characters like I'm thinking of like from the Black Hat or from Spider-Man the game. Yeah, like if we saw that or like saw more of his just like his like little city connections and like people that he like knows and fights and maybe falls in love with and has like a little thing with like I would love to see that, but I don't know if they would ever do that.
I mean, Tom is more than likely going to do another trilogy. And the way I see it playing out, I mean, he's contracted to do one, but like, he doesn't really want to, is the vibe that I'm getting.
He's an idiot, so that's fine.
I mean, I totally get it. Like, he's been trying to step out of these big action roles, and they've all failed except for Spider-Man and Uncharted, which Uncharted is basically just him being this version of Spider-Man.
I would say, yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely get it from an artistic standpoint. He wants to do something different, and it's also because he's doing so much of his own stuff. I mean, one of the things that makes the apartment scene, like, one of the moments from the apartment scene that's so great is when he, like, jumps off on the wall and the spotlight's on him or whatever, and he's, like, taking a breather. Like, that versus, like, the monument scene. Both extremely similar shots. The difference is the monument was all CG, and that was cool. But this, you actually see Tom, like, his mask is off. You see him physically breathing. It's not some animated thing. Like, it's just so much more. Practical effects are 90% of the time always going to be better than computer generated effects.
100%.
And so, I mean, I get why he's kind of done with it. But the way I see things going for another trilogy would be more on the ground, because that's the only thing that we haven't really seen, and there's a lot of opportunity there. I could see a ton of opportunity going on the ground. The love interest would probably be Felicia Hardy, although Amy Pascal did say that she anticipates Zendaya to come back to play MJ. If Zendaya comes back to play MJ again, I won't be too upset about it.
I won't either. I love Zendaya. So
and we could also do you could also do a whole story with him and like Felicia Hardy like seducing him and stuff like that's a normal thing, like where he kind of like goes back and forth between the two. That's a possibility.
Isn't that like wasn't that the rumor with like Sydney Sweeney's casting and Madam Web? Like she was potential.
I mean,
yeah, that'd be dope. But
yeah,
I don't know.
We'll see. Yeah, like there's that with the X-Men coming up. He could get together with Kitty Pryde, which I think would be really cool from like the Ultimate Universe.
That would be dope.
So I mean, there's lots of potentials for like love interests or whatever. But yeah, I think he'll be more on the ground. I have a feeling that they'll do probably not Fisk, but maybe a Hammerhead or even just a smaller villain, like Rhino or Scorpion. I think would be really cool because he's already been established in this universe.
That'd be dope.
I love to see Scorpion. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that we could do on the ground, and I feel like they would take a Spider-Man PS4 approach, where you would have Miles Morales be introduced, and either the first one at the end just as a kid, and the second one he would be more involved and then get his spider powers, and the third one would be Tom Holland training up Miles Morales. Yeah. And then at the end, Tom Holland would die, and then Miles like takes over full time.
Which I'd be cool with.
Or I could even see us with Secret Wars coming together. I mean, that's how Miles was introduced into the 616 universe there. So they could just kind of be like, "Hey, here's Spider-Man."
I feel like we'll get a Miles like relatively soon.
Oh, we have to.
Yeah,
there's no way they won't.
I don't think before Secret Wars. I mean, obviously Miles has been hinted at
with how they're approaching every with the stories that they're telling and who they're kind of going with.
Like their characters that they have to have in that mix.
Not that they have to have, but
but
there's a trend. I mean, just in comic books, we saw Sam Wilson's Captain America and the Mighty Thor and who else am I thinking of? Like we saw a lot of those characters. Miles Morales is another one. Ironheart. All of those characters kind of showed up all at the same time. She-Hulk's a little older than that. But all those characters kind of showed up in comic books at the same time because it was time for those types of characters' stories to be told, and they seem to be doing that now with the MCU. Yeah. So I feel like, Miles has to be around the corner. Everybody loves Miles Morales.
Dude,
So I feel like he's definitely...
I'm excited for that.
He's definitely coming. Any final thoughts on No Way Home, Graham?
Dude, no matter how many times they throw that movie in the theater, you know I'm at least going to go back once. So
I mean, I've seen it 6 times. I mean, I saw Endgame, I think 7 times in theaters. And I'm like, is Spider-Man is that going to be the movie where I see it the most times in theaters? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's definitely in the running. I can tell you that
it's
much.
up there so far.
It's definitely a possibility. When we come back, I mean, we teased it a little bit. We kind of got a little ahead of ourselves sometimes, but we're going to talk about Spider-Man in general, what makes a Spider-Man movie, which is the best Spider-Man, who is the best Spider-Man. Questions will be answered in the next segment as Graham points to himself. We'll be right back.
Dude, I'm so glad we're doing this.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a lot of fun, and it's not as difficult as I thought it would be.
No, not at all. Like Anchor has made it especially easy when it comes to like actually getting our podcast out on the air. Because when hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on all the listening platforms. So easy getting it over to Spotify, getting it to Apple, wherever you're trying to get your podcast to.
Yeah, I think we're on like 7 platforms just through Anchor, and not even just the distribution, but even just creating the podcast. Like there's so many recording and editing tools within it, so you can record, edit, add music in, sound effects, all sorts of things directly through Anchor, and it is free.
Dude, that's amazing.
It's incredible. So if you would like to start your own podcast, just like ours, go to anchor.fm on your desktop device, or you can go on to your mobile app store and download the Anchor app. We're back talking Spider-Man No Way Home, the more fun stuff version. So this segment, we're going to dive in real deep. It's going to get real nerdy real quick because we're talking Spider-Man and what makes a good Spider-Man movie is kind of like the general idea. Okay. But I mean, I guess it's kind of just like what makes a good Spider-Man story, if you want to be want to expand out a little more. So Graham, what in your opinion, what are some things that make a good Spider-Man movie?
My number one thing, and I even think this is like my biggest reason of why, like Tom Holland is like, I think arguably one of my favorite Peter Parkers and Spider-Man that we've gotten, which I know a lot of people are like, no, you can't, like, blah, blah, blah. That's just how I feel. Honestly, only is because he is not necessarily as much anymore, but like even when he was cast, like he is a kid. He was like a teenager. Like even when he was like originally in Civil War, he was what, like 17, 18 years old, and now he's
I thought he was in his 20s.
In Civil War? Mm-hmm. I mean, still several years younger than Andrew or Toby whenever he was.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
When they were. Like, I don't know. And Tom's a short king. Man is little. So he looks like a kid, which is great. But, like, I don't know. I just feel like that was just more of, like, he actually seemed like a high schooler compared to what we got with, like, Andrew. And, like Andrew, like, dude, that, even watching it now and, like, them, like, going on their, like, field trip to, like, the science, it just seems like a college thing, man. I just expect to see it in college. Especially with, what's her name?
Emma Stone?
Yes, Emma Stone. I was just thinking like La La Land. I was like, that's not her name, not her actual name. But yeah, like they don't look like kids. They're not like, same thing with what we kind of said. Like he's almost 40. Even when Jamie Foxx is like, oh, you're still just a kid. Like, probably no, you're not. Like, but still, it's just, I don't know. That was always one of my big things is like Tom Holland is like I like to have the age like seem somewhat realistic because then he actually goes through like the little, like when he goes through like the like issues that a teenager would, it just feels a little more realistic and like relatable, I guess, which kind of makes the from an audience standpoint a little bit better. But like even like I just wanted to mention too, like from the extra scene with like him and his brother at the that they had. And he's like running around. That lady comes out. She's like, "You should not be doing that. You're a child." And he's like, "A child?" And someone else is like, "Yeah, he's 14." He's like, 14? He's like, "My kid's 14. He's an idiot." And he's like, "I'm not 14." He's like, "What do you mean?" And they just didn't let him get a word in. But just like, that was so funny because I'm just like, yeah, like even when he is still trying to do little things like stop a crime, like people are still just gonna like jet in. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. Like this definitely did the best job at like being in high school. I feel like they progressively get a little younger. Like, especially watching like 2002 Spider-Man, it's just all the high school sequences are like, these are like 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, this is not what, like, as a kid, I'm like, wow, this is what high school is like. And then I get to high school and I'm like, wait.
Like if you look at high schoolers now, like I saw like just from family friends and stuff, like kids like having their freshman year of high school. These kids look like they're 4 years old. I could not imagine one of those kids being like a Spider-Man. I'd be like, no, you're not. That's not real. Like that's not. So like with them being a little closer, like it still helps for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they look, as a whole, they look better. Andre Taylor, I think is her name, who plays Betty White. Mm-hmm. Not Betty White, Betty Brant. Wow. And this one does look extremely old.
Yeah.
Compared to everybody else, but I mean, it is what it is, and she's not any older than anybody else. I think she's in her young to early 20s.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that necessarily needs to be a part of like Spider-Man as a whole, because Spider-Man does kind of like, it can go in different directions.
Right.
But I guess with like these origin stories, like the stories they're telling, for sure, like it's definitely an element to
because
like
any Spider-Man movie we get
consider.
now, we're gonna get Spider-Man and we're gonna get Peter Parker. Like you get pretty much one of the two. Now, moving forward, I don't know as much just with what's happened, but like that's always been a big thing for me. Is like I just don't want like a 30-year-old dude to be whipping around in a high school. Like you're not a like that. That was my
in high
thing.
school. Like I would,
or even outside of high school too. Because I'm like I don't know. It just
I would
doesn't
love
feel
to
like
see older versions of Spider-Man, like with where we are now, especially like Dan Slott's Spider-Man run, which is what Spider-Man PS4 is based off of. Like that is all just adult Spider-Man. Like at one point,
because he's what, like
he starts his own think tank, and like he's in his 30s, and he has his own Parker Industries thing, and like I don't know, things get really interesting when he gets older, and there's different stories you can tell like with that. When it comes to movies, though, I think
which I would love to see too. Like I'm sorry, if they ever like even if they took like Toby Spider, like if they did like like what is, and I don't know much comics. That's the main thing. So I don't know if the storyline's already been, but like you know like the washed up Peter Parker from like Spider-Verse. Isn't there like a older like Spider-Man kind of storyline like that or no?
Not particularly.
No? Okay. I just didn't know if there was like one where Spider-Man is just like older, but I know they've done things with like when him and MJ are like married and they are adults and they're like just going through life and like things happen, like this stuff like that. Like I would love to see that as a movie.
Yeah.
Like that would be so dope to see something past the origin, something past the high school. Like that would be really fun to watch live action.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the most like serious answer to this question is a line from No Way Home when Peter realizes that the Goblin's back and he's going to ruin everything. He says something along the lines of like, you have all of these desires, but the world makes you choose. And I think that is what, like that is like Spider-Man in a nutshell. Like he has all these things that he wants and that he wants to do, but the world makes him choose, like, do I go after that or do I go, use my responsibility, my power responsibly,
right,
and go in this other direction. And I mean, that's kind of like, that's always, I mean, that's why with great power comes great responsibility is such a huge deal, because that is what, I mean, that's what he based, that's his moral code, right? Like that's everything he does is based off that. But the thing that like, I think a lot of the movies especially miss out on is, yes, Uncle Ben / Aunt May dying is a major aspect to what propels him to do what he does. But the other thing that, quite frankly, I think pops up even more in comics is when he lost Gwen Stacy. I think that's one of the things that makes Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man as a whole one of my favorites in the way that they told that story. Because I think it's very similar to the comics where, he becomes Spider-Man because of Uncle Ben or whatever.
Right.
But it's when he can't save Gwen Stacy, that's when he really becomes the Spider-Man that everybody knows. Like that's when he like really matures and figures out like what it means to be Spider-Man and like how he has to act. And from that day on, he says like, no one else is going to die because of me.
Yeah.
And obviously that doesn't happen, but
Right.
like that's one thing that I wish we got in Amazing Spider-Man 3, because that's obviously where that was going.
Right.
But like that's one thing I think everyone's kind of missed so far, is like this mission of like, I want to save everybody, but I can't. I have to choose, like, do I save this person? Do I stop the bad guy? Or, whatever. Like, there's always this constant fight between what Peter Parker wants and
What he can't do.
Peter Parker gets, or like what he has to do morally, which I think is just interesting to like watch, and it makes you feel a lot of sympathy for him.
Yeah. I mean, even now, like it's a heavy thing to like think about and like have in the stories, because even now I'm just like, damn, like just like, like,
I mean, yeah, like when Betty asked, like, if you saw a spider that bit you, like, would you say thank you or no thank you?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
or no, thanks for nothing is what she said. That whole sequence was just great. Yeah, no, I feel like that like dichotomy of like, you're being pulled in two different directions, like which do you go with? I think that's a struggle that everybody deals with, and that's one of the reasons why Spider-Man is always so relatable and why people love him so much. And I feel like with him like pushing MJ and Ned away, I think that's kind of, they very cleverly did the night Gwen Stacy died arc without actually doing that arc.
Right.
And they did it extremely subtly. And it's one of the other things I love about No Way Home is like throughout the movie, you can see Peter terrified that something is going to happen to MJ or Ned. And when it does, like obviously Andrew gets his redemption and like we get to finish his story. But also even after that, like, I mean, when Andrew's first talking about how he lost his MJ, Peter's face is horrified. And it's subtle, but like his expression changes and he's like, oh wait, this did happen to one of my other in another universe. And then it almost does happen.
Right.
And he's terrified. And like, he's going to tell MJ, like, I'm your boyfriend or whatever, until he sees the Band-Aid on her forehead. And then he puts the letter away and is like, no, I'm just going to leave them and let them live their life without me. Like, I think they're kind of going to go in that same direction.
Yeah.
And the way that they did that was extremely subtle and like just brilliant all the way around.
Yeah. Whoa.
Whoa. I don't know. I don't know. I'm excited to see where they go with things. Like, are there any other just Spider-Man things that like you just have to have it to be a good Spider-Man story?
I don't know. I always like when they are relatively like not comic accurate, because I know like it's not like that story, but like anything that really does like suit or fit like super
I mean, you have to
well.
have with the exception of Mysterio, a nature-related villain.
Right. Right. And so, yeah, anytime that's like well done, that's like one of the things. But I don't know. Like, I know we've gotten so many movies over the years. Like, I honestly, I feel like a big one that is not really touched, like kept in mind. I feel like when people are writing and making these movies is the villains that we get in these movies, because a lot of them are just like not that great.
Sure.
Especially in like the recent movies. Like, honestly, like with like, never mind. I was going to like kind of give props to like the OG Spider-Man trilogy, like in there, like with Venom and like besides Doc Ock, like I didn't care for any of the other ones really. Like seeing like Venom and
I think they did a good job with
even
Norman
like,
and like showing the mental battle of like having this other voice in your head.
Yeah.
The one thing with the original ones though is like every single one of those villains, they aren't villains. They're just something happened and they went crazy.
Right. Well, no, right. And that's true. That's true. But they did really well, because I mean, even like Doc and like Oxen, the reunion at the end, when he's like, "How you doing, my boy?" And like they're that conversation. It's just like, dude, like it's crazy. But
yeah, the one thing that I do kind of hate about this movie is that Doc Ock was in it, because I feel like Doc Ock in the comics, there's a lot of opportunity to do what you're saying with like, villains don't really matter. They're just kind of dudes who do bad things, and Spider-Man meets them up. Like Doc Ock actually has a lot of really, really cool story arcs.
Yeah.
And I really wanted them to do Superior Spider-Man like so bad, where Doc Ock takes over Peter Parker's body and like basically like he sees into Peter's life, and so because Doc Ock's gonna die, and so like he sees into Peter's life and realizes why Peter does what he does, and so Doc Ock's like, all right, fine, I'll be Spider-Man now since I'm getting like you're dead technically, your conscience is gone. I'll be Spider-Man, but I'm gonna be the superior Spider-Man, and so he goes on like a rampage, and like he has like basically it's kind of like an allegory for like post 9/11 America, where like he just like. He has all these Ockbots all over the place that are like constantly surveilling everything, and he's like stopping muggings before they actually happen because he like figures out they have plans. Like he'll just like he just murders people. It's a really cool arc.
It's an incredible
I
storyline.
highly recommend everyone go watch it. But like I think that'd be cool for like Tom Holland to play like he's not Peter Parker anymore. He's Doc Ock now. Like I think that could be really cool. I mean it's still possible to get it, but I feel like with having Doc Ock in No Way Home, it's a little less likely.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they just have like a lot to do with the villains, and some of them have either been like repeated or just like super like drug on. Like I'm sorry, like Venom has really been stretched over the years, and like I feel like it's never been. Honestly, like, I personally like Tom Hardy's Venom, the first one, the second one.
Well, and here's the thing with Venom though is like if we go back to what I was saying about this fight between desire. Right. The thing that makes Venom so interesting is that Venom forces Peter to go with desire every single time. And so I think that's why Venom is so popular and why I think they're trying to keep pushing it in that direction because we're seeing a darker version of Spider-Man who just does what he wants.
Oh, shoot. Okay. I like
that.
But the
problem is that it hasn't been pulled off very well yet. So maybe in
Feige
future
hasn't had a chance
Feige,
to pull it off yet.
Well, I mean, he did have a chance with Spider-Man 3. But
it's fine.
We don't talk about that one. Tom Holland Spider-Man may encounter Venom. If that whole thing is how they introduce Venom. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's really lazy writing. In a movie that I've been praising the writing for, that is the stupidest way to introduce Venom, but it is what it is. So I don't know, Venom just hasn't been treated correctly.
I say he hasn't gotten the good treatment so far.
Speaking of Venom, though, I will say another point for what makes a good Spider-Man movie is you have to actually have Spider-Man in it. And I say that because I pulled up a list because I want to ask the question: what is the best Spider-Man movie? And so I went on the internet, I found a Rotten Tomatoes thing where they basically ranked every single one based on the Rotten Tomatoes score. Okay. And because technically Morbius and Venom are both Spider-Man movies, they are on this list, and obviously they are at the bottom. Morbius has a rank of 15%, Venom with 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. So those are 12 and 11. And then here's a really sad thing. So number 10, we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2 at 51%. Rotten Tomatoes score, and right above that we have at number 9 Venom Let There Be Carnage at 57%.
I didn't realize that even got that high of a. That's crap. I really don't know why that's better than
a Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man.
Is better than a Spider-Man movie.
Is better than a Spider-Man movie. And then at number 8 we have Spider-Man 3 with a 63%. Okay. Number 7 we have The First Amazing Spider-Man with 71%.
First certified.
2002 Spider-Man is at number 6 with a 90%.
Wow.
Far From Home is at number 5 with a 90%. Homecoming is at number 4 with a 92%. Spider-Man 2 is at number 3 with a 93%. Okay. No Way Home at number 2 with 93%, and Into the Spider-Verse at number 1 with 97%. So those are the official like critic rankings. How do you feel about that list?
Personally, I think I would actually switch No Way Home and Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Again, the live action just does something extra for me, just personally. Like I just like to, feels more relatable.
Sure.
But honestly, everything else is fairly sweet. Besides Let There Be Carnage, that should be at the very bottom. I would literally rank Morbius, but no, I can't. I don't know. Morbius was actually a total piece of crap. That movie was horrible. I don't know. I like I said, personally, like 2018 Venom, I really liked that movie. I would sit down and watch that again. I have watched it several times. I own it. It was funny. Like that was actually very funny of a movie. It was really, really well done. Not well done, but it was great.
It was an enjoyable experience. For
yes. And I would watch it
Emphasis
again.
on the for you.
For me. For a lot of people, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
I wonder what the audience scores are for those movies, though. How those...
I have a feeling they would rank pretty similarly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the top 3 on this list, I feel like in general, if you were to ask everybody, like if you were to ask 100 people, what are your top 3 Spider-Man movies? I feel like Into the Spider-Verse, No Way Home, and Spider-Man 2 would all be somewhere like in some order in the top 3 of everybody's Spider-Man movies.
Definitely.
What about those 3 movies like make them so good?
I mean, No Way Home is just like, kind of like we've said, it's almost everything like perfect that you could do when it comes to that. Like I said, that's why for me it would go up a bit. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse, I think, was something that we've never gotten like that style of a movie before, and like that movie was just dope all around. Like it was so well done. Man, I don't really know.
Okay,
I said throw in your 2 cents real quick.
let me break this down for you. So, I mean, I think a lot of people will say that Spider-Man 2. Into the Spider-Verse and No Way Home, those are fairly recent movies. So like before that, Spider-Man 2 was like the Spider-Man movie to beat. And I think really what it came down to is like it's one of the best superhero movies, because like we said, like if we're saying that what makes a good Spider-Man movie, like the big thing is desire versus responsibility. That's what this movie really tackles, right? He has all these desires, but because of this responsibility, he can't have them. So he like gives up being Spider-Man. He like physically is not able to be Spider-Man anymore. And so he kind of like he gives it up, but because of the responsibility, he has to rise up above all of that. He has to conquer his web block, as No Way Home would put it, and take down Doc Ock to like protect people he loves, right? And so like at its core, it's a really great superhero movie. It's a really great Spider-Man movie. 2004, like it was just, the effects are incredible. I mean, so many iconic moments with Doc Ock throwing the car through the the restaurant, him stopping the train, everybody, carrying him back in. Like there's a lot of really, really cool moments in there. Of the 3, I would definitely put it at number 3. I think it's just because it is a little dated. I think maybe if it was done now, things would be different, but it doesn't go much further than this general idea of like desire versus responsibility. With the other 2, I mean, they're both multiverse movies, and multiverse is kind of
that's the thing right now.
It's kind of the thing right now. Both of them also kind of tackle desire versus responsibility. With Into the Spider-Verse, we're getting, I mean, Into the Spider-Verse is so good. We're getting a lot of things with that, but like, we're getting all these other Spider-Men who are Into the Spider-Verse is basically the third act of No Way Home. In a very broad, like 5,000-foot view, it's kind of the same idea. Other Spider-Men are coming to help this one, send everybody back to where they belong, and save the multiverse. So like, they're both very similar stories, but I think the thing that makes these so great is the writing. But the thread that I will use to tie all 3 of them together is they all feel like comic books. I mean, No Way Home, we talked about why that feels like a comic book. Into the Spider-Verse is literally a comic book. I remember seeing the theater, like going to it, I was extremely skeptical. I thought it was just like Sony trying to be woke or something with a black Spider-Man. That's not at all what it was. And it was just, it was mind blowing to like see a comic book literally come to life on the screen. And then Spider-Man 2 is just a very classic comic book story. That one is kind of just like an arc that's spread out. So I think I'm going to ask you a question of like, there are these people who say they don't care for comic books. They don't read comic books, like you, for example. Like, is there something about the way that, if we're saying that all 3 of these are some of the most comic book, some of the 3 biggest movies that feel like comic books, do you think that like that has anything to do with like, do you think that comic book structure has anything to do with what's making these movies good, or is it like, are you catching my drift?
I am. I think, honestly, yes. I think the reason it does is because I personally, like, I always tried to get into comics. I would buy them all the time. I would try and sit there and read them. I didn't realize, I'm like dyslexic as it's bad, bro. And I really didn't realize this until like a few years ago. Now it's actually like kind of like when someone official told me that. So that's unfortunate because I've just never liked reading. I can't sit there. I can't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. But I always wanted to join comic books. I think the fact that these give us this movie, especially in the Spider-Verse, can give me that feeling like I'm literally just watching the paper come to life. That does it for me. I think that is a little more interesting because it's not like a
Sure. Yeah.
like I said, I've said several times in this podcast, like I love a live action movie if it's done correctly and it's done well. Like that's the right there. But when it comes to like the Spider-Verse and things that are just like done a little differently, but really well, and it gives me that different feel for it's like a comic book come to life. Yeah, I'm gonna love it.
Because like the structure of a comic book is very different than reading a novel.
Yeah.
Like just in the way it's told. And a lot of times it's kind of like I'll read an arc and I'm like, wow, that was really cool, but like they only have 6 issues to do it. And so like things aren't always paced to the best.
Right.
But I think that's kind of why it works in a movie setting because I don't know. There's just something like I want to like dive deeper into at some point, not today because we're running out of time. But like I don't know. There's just something about like the way comic books are structured and told that like just works perfectly for the screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's why comic books were such a success way back in the day when they were first
Before we had screens. No, I'm just
kidding. Because like we didn't really have movies in that way, and so it was a way to visualize words and like tell stories with lots of action or lots of suspense. Because horror comics were kind of like the way that like the modern comic book was like developed. They kind of grew out of horror comic books, and so like I feel like that was one of the like. I don't know. There's something about comic books that just structurally, the way those stories are told and the stories that they can tell that like a novel just can't. But I think like when you adapt it to the screen, it, I don't know, it works really, really well.
Yeah.
So let's get to the most controversial topic of the day. I don't know. I guess we didn't actually answer. I mean, of those three, you would say No Way Home is like your favorite of Spider-Man movie so far.
Yeah. So far, what we've got, I would be able to put that up there.
I think I'm going to agree with you, but like Into the Spider-Verse.
It's a very, if anything,
like,
honestly,
Into the
like
Spider-Verse
they would be
is-
tied in the same thing. Like here's the thing.
Yeah.
Same way, if I'm looking at the same list, what did they rank? Like Spider-Man and Far From Home. Okay, 2002 and Far From Home. Both have a 90%. Both technically tied. Far From Home is ranked 5, though. Spider-Man is ranked 6. That's, in my mind, that's how I see the one.
Something
and two.
has to be lower. I mean,
Yeah, something's got to be lower. And like I said, the live action part does it for me a little extra. That's why I'm going to give it that bump.
Sure.
But by no means am I like degrading Into the Spider-Verse
Right.
at all, because that movie it's fantastic. It's incredible.
For me, like, and maybe it's still just like recency bias. Like when No Way Home came out, and I was like, I know it was all the debate of like what's the best Spider-Man movie. I knew it was like one of those two, and so I went and rewatched Into the Spider-Verse, and it's a near perfect movie, and I love it. But No Way Home just gives me a very different feeling watching it compared to Into the Spider-Verse.
Yep.
Maybe it's because I've seen Into the Spider-Verse countless times over the last few years. So many things will change in the future, but like No Way Home still just gives me like, because I grew up watching Toby and Andrew and now Tom, like seeing the three interact and seeing like all of their stories continue and finish and start, or I don't know, it's a different, and it gives me personally different feelings. So like, I think objectively Into the Spider-Verse might be better just in terms of like what it was able to do. But I think I like No Way Home better.
Yeah.
At this point in time.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah.
So speaking of seeing all three Spider-Men on the big screen, who do you think is the best Spider-Man? And that is up to your own interpretation of what I mean by who is the best Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's still got to be Tom Holland Spider-Man.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I think it's just because like, we've just seen more with him. He's gotten to do more. He fought an alien in space and on Earth. Like he just, like, I don't know. Like even though we've gotten like, compared to Toby, like they each got a 3-stretch movie arc, but like we saw Spider-Man in Civil War. We saw Spider-Man Infinity War. And again, like we got Spider-Man. We've got so much with him. With this Spider-Man, like that's why this is my favorite so far. And just because, again, it's still compared to like the big 6 and like just all the Avengers and all these massive heroes, like he's a kid, like he's a Spider-Man. Like he's just like that's the main thing where he's still like, it's still just like like, yes, he's a superhero. Yes, and he's fought like he's an Avenger, and like so I said, what's the Avenger? Who is that? But he's still definitely my favorite Spider-Man. I think of what we've gotten. Like, I would definitely say, I think Tobey's Spider-Man is actually my second favorite over Andrew's, just from overall Spider-Man. I would switch their Peter Parkers though. As dumb as that is, I think I'd get a little hate for that, but I just really did like to see Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. Like, I kind of liked actually what they did with a little bit with what they did in Amazing Spider-Man. So, but overall, I think Tom Holland's.
I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with, I love all three as Spider-Man. I think they all did really well in their own regard.
100%. Yeah, no, that's definitely fair.
When it comes to who I think is best, though, I'm going to take your list and I am just going to flip it.
Whoa.
I'll start with Tom Holland because that's what you said is all correct. Like, I love Tom Holland. He's done great. I think he's had the best balance of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. My only issue with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, though, is that he doesn't have any of the same struggles or any of the moments that I love about Spider-Man, just with him existing in the MCU.
That we haven't seen yet, though. I think that's what I like too, because take that same concept.
I think I think we're gonna get there.
Yeah,
sure. But again, like, that's flipped in that, like, to me, that's just going backwards. Like, having Tony make all of his suits, like him having all this high tech stuff. It's not the same. That's none of that is what I like about Spider-Man. I'm not gonna say that's necessarily bad. Like, I even said earlier, like, I would like to see an older version of Peter who has his own lab and everything. Just when it comes to, like, whenever I think of Spider-Man, that is not the first thing I think of. I still think Tom does a fantastic job as Peter, but he didn't have the same kind of issues, or I don't know, just a very different background. And that's not. I don't know. I'm not going to blame Tom Holland for that. That's aren't really his decisions,
right?
But I don't know. Just for me, still, it says more about the three actors as Spider-Man playing Spider-Man than it does about one being terrible. I still really like Tom Holland Spider-Man.
Yeah.
As a whole, I like the Tom Holland trilogy more.
Definitely.
But when it comes to who's actually Spider-Man, I think he's the worst. Because
the worst Spider-Man or the worst Peter Parker?
The worst both. Because somebody has to be.
Damn.
Tobey is just iconic.
Chat for my boy.
I can't.
Tobey definitely no.
Tobey's just he started it all. I mean, really, like, he's the one that kind of brought superheroes into the light, especially, like, looking back on it. Like, he did not look like a superhero. I mean, and I think that's what really sold him as Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is supposed to be relatable and people can actually see themselves being Spider-Man and someone who looks like Tobey Maguire. I think he did a fantastic job at playing Peter Parker. He had all those issues and things. He was scrappy, like I want. But when I was rewatching all of the Spider-Man movies in preparation for No Way Home last winter, I was watching The Amazing Spider-Mans, and I was like, these movies suck. Whatever. I'm just gonna like sit down and force myself to watch these. And yes, those two movies are objectively just complete and utter garbage. Watching Andrew Garfield act as Peter Parker in Spider-Man is the most accurate interpretation that I have seen after reading lots of comics. Like, Andrew's is the quippiest. He is incredibly scrappy. The relationship he has with Gwen Stacy, like you said, is phenomenal. And the thing that I found that was interesting is, like, with the Amazing Spider-Man movies, what I essentially boil it down to is that all of the best parts of those movies were improvised by Andrew Garfield. So, like, there's the iconic moment, like, in the first one where he's at, like, the thug, and he's like, oh no, like, a gun, like, that's my biggest weakness ever. Like, that whole scene, all of the takes that they used were all improvised by Andrew Garfield. Like, he was just like, hey, yeah, like, he was just like, hey, can I try something?
Yeah.
And none of that stuff is written in the script. He just improvised it. There's a great moment in Spider-Man 2 where he's, like, crossing the street because he sees Gwen Stacy, like, across the way, and he's, like, walking across the street, and he's, like, just going through traffic, and he's stopping and, like, using his spider sense through it all. It's a really cool Spider-Man moment, and it's, like, showing how Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but, like, that wasn't in the script. Like, he was just supposed to, like, see him and then cut. He was over across the street. He's like, wait, I have an idea. Like, can we do this really quick? And it was a really cool moment. Like, there's just all sorts of moments throughout those movies where I actually see the comic book version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in that movie. And it's a shame that Andrew just got some really just awfully written stories that just don't make any sense. I don't know why they had to go on this. They wasted so much time trying to establish like where his dad was, and like, I guess his dad's not dead or whatever. It's just a bunch of baloney.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Literally,
Yeah.
Did you ever see that deleted scene?
I have seen the deleted scene. Like, it's just
literally forgot about that.
It's so stupid and ridiculous and pointless that everyone forgets about it until they don't, and then it's like, I wish I did forget about it.
I'm glad I
Doctor
did.
Strange, please erase that from my memory. Like, I don't know, those movies are awful, and I think that like No Way Home, especially with after No Way Home, like people campaigning for Amazing Spider-Man 3, I think they really realized, like when Andrew was given like good writing. Yes, he's an amazing Spider-Man. He just had some really awful movies. Yeah. I that no pun intended when I said he was an amazing Spider-Man. I don't know. So I think
I would honestly agree with that.
I think objectively Andrew is the best and is my favorite. It's just unfortunate that I never really get to enjoy it because I cannot force myself to watch those movies.
Why were some parts of those movies filmed in like 8K, bro? You know what I'm talking about, right? Have you seen some of those clips being like the clearest visuals I've ever seen?
In 8K. It's just that it was all CG, so there's like no flaws in it because they just put it all there, and it just looks, it's awful, it's terrible. I hate it.
Some of the clearest,
but some of the best
I've ever seen.
Best moments, and even just like, I mean, to give a little bit of credit to the Amazing Spider-Man 2, like the whole all the build up to Goblin and the way that Goblin looks in that movie is awful, but like the way they did the night that Gwen Stacy died, the way that whole sequence went is really, really well done. When you get past the fact that Green Goblin actually does look like a happy green elf or whatever. Those are
that clock tower scene. Still like one of the coldest things. That was tough, dude. I remember sitting there in theaters and I was like, she's not gonna make it, bro. Like, I just remember like sitting there and I remember it happened. I was just like, I think genuinely like can like think back. That was like one of like the like first few movies I was just like, damn, like he didn't get her, bro. Like, he got her, but he
pulled up a little too hard.
Way. Yeah.
So Graham, do you have any final thoughts on No Way Home or Spider-Man movies or actors?
Honestly, so many. You know, we could talk about this for hours and hours on end, but for what we're talking about, not today. We could definitely, at a solid point, we could wrap up.
We'll save it for next year when we get like into the Spider-Verse 2 or something.
Yeah, and we're just gonna have
another very long episode. I don't know. I think Spider-Man's great. We love Spider-Man. Hopefully you do too if you sat through all this episode, because I have a feeling it's going to be a very long one. You've been listening to the Popcorn Hangover. I'm Alex. That's Graham. We've been talking Spider-Man. Let us know what your thoughts were on No Way Home, the more fun stuff version or the original version. Who's your favorite Spider-Man? What's your favorite Spider-Man movie? Let us know over on all the things: Instagram, TikTok, patreon.com/thepopcornhangover. Graham, any thoughts? Any parting words of wisdom?
I think that's it, man.
All right.
I think that's it. Peace.